Perfect Little Princess written by Avril Sabine. Dedication. For everyone who has found a way to make their imperfect life perfect for them. Book description. Maddy hates living with her overbearing father, and is determined to live with her mum. She's sick of not being able to be herself. But no one is listening to her wishes, and when she learns why, she begins to fear that not only will she be stuck living with him until she finishes school, but her family has other secrets they're keeping from her. Chapter 1. Maddy glanced over her shoulder and swore under her breath. Was he following her? She hadn't thought he'd seen her, but maybe he had. If she could get to her class, she might be able to avoid him. He was the last person she would have expected to see at her school. He shouldn't even be in Brisbane. Her luck was absolute crap, and this proved it. She slipped through the crowd and into her next classroom, barely resisting the urge to look over her shoulder. She dumped her books on her desk as she slid onto the hard plastic seat, leaning back to stare at the ceiling as if the answer to her problem was there. White paint and a couple of fans lazily turning gave her no clue about what to do. He hadn't said anything about starting a new school after the holidays. Why hadn't he mentioned it? She would have been more prepared. A stack of books dropped onto the desk beside her and startled Maddy from her thoughts. She looked over to meet the grin of her best friend, Sasha. Maddy's answering grin was forced. Hey! I'm so over school. I can't wait until the next holidays. Why do they have to be ages away? Sasha slid into the seat beside her. It's only the first day back. Sasha sighed. I know. They should shoot the person who decided the length of school holidays. It's the middle of spring. Who wants to be stuck in a classroom at this time of year? I'd rather be on a beach. At least the next ones are longer. And include Christmas. That should make you happy. It's only the start of October. That's months away. Sasha's words were almost a moan. Maddy's grin came more easily at her friend's expression of disgust. Sasha was always good at distracting her. Looking her friend over, she took in the changes she'd barely had time to focus on earlier. This was the first chance they'd had for more than a quick hello this morning. I like your new haircut. Sasha's expression immediately brightened. Thanks. She ran her fingers through her long brown hair that now had auburn highlights and a fringe that ended sharply below her hazel eyes, thin enough to be able to see through. Before the holidays, Sasha's hair had all been one length, like Maddy's light brown hair. It suits you. I wish my father would let me do something with my hair instead of expecting me to plait it neatly back like some little girl from the last century. She shook her head slowly. No, make that from 2 centuries ago. Her gaze was drawn to the door as another group of students entered the classroom. Her heart felt like it skipped a beat. Yep, it was official. Her luck was absolute crap. She slouched at her desk and tilted her head down, wishing she'd ignored her father and not plaited her hair back from her face. The way her day was going, she'd end up grounded anyway. Maybe it wasn't too late to undo the plait and hide behind her long hair. Are you okay? You don't look so good. Sasha leaned forward to peer into her face. Gee, your compliments are gonna go straight to my head. Maddy couldn't resist another glance towards the crowd near the doorway. Why? She wasn't sure exactly what she wanted answered. Why her? Why him? Why the hell was he at her school? Maybe all those questions. Very funny. Sasha glanced over her shoulder. Do you know him? Know who? Maddy dropped her gaze to the desk, focusing her light brown eyes on the initials drawn heavily on the edge. Lightly running her fingers over the indent, she frantically tried to think of something she could tell Sasha. She couldn't discuss this right now. In fact, it was all she could do to remain in her seat. She wanted to run and hide. Oh, come on, even you're not that oblivious. The boy who's surrounded by every brainless blonde in the class. Both the natural and bottle ones. She looked at him. The boy Sasha had called him. She knew him as Logan. He had a ready grin and was laughing at something that had been said to him. Even his dark brown eyes were filled with humor. His hair, a shade lighter than his eyes, was streaked at the ends from hours outside, dark where his cap covered it. His head turned in her direction as if he felt her gaze rest on him. She quickly returned her attention to the desk. She couldn't meet his gaze. What could she say to him? This was a disaster. But what else was new when it came to her life? He looks new to the school. That wasn't what I asked. I could figure that out for myself. Do you know him? The teacher stepped into the classroom and strode towards his desk as he spoke. Everyone take their seat. Holidays are over. Time to put your nose to the grindstone. She was relieved. Talking wasn't tolerated in Mr. Gallo's class. She would have a reprieve from the questioning. It wouldn't be much of a reprieve. Sasha wasn't one to drop a subject until she'd learned everything possible about it. And it looked like Sasha wouldn't be the only one looking for answers. Twice she'd caught Logan glance at her, and both times she'd pretended not to see him. But she could only pretend for so long. Eventually he'd approach her, and she didn't know what to do about that. When the bell rang for the next class, she was the first one through the door. She couldn't talk to him in front of everyone. No way. That would be an absolute disaster. World War kind of disaster. Lunchtime found her headed towards the library, eating a sandwich on the way. The library should be quiet on such a sunny day, and Maddy hoped to avoid both Sasha and Logan. They'd have questions she couldn't answer. Not until she could think of how to deal with the situation. Situation. What a bland word to describe something that made her feel queasy, frantic, and wanting to find the nearest hole to crawl into. It was nearly time for the bell to signal the end of lunch, before Sasha turned up in the library. She stood over Maddy, hands on her hips, and glared at her. You want to tell me what's going on? Maddy glanced around the library. There was no one close enough to hear. That was as long as Sasha kept her voice down. And if she didn't answer Sasha quickly, it looked like voice raising might be a very real possibility. I think I might have a bit of a problem. Then why didn't you tell me instead of hiding here? Maddy sighed. Will you accept cowardice as an answer? She stared up at Sasha, mentally begging her friend to understand. With a sigh, Sasha pulled a chair out from beside Maddy and dropped onto it. You told me you had a boring holiday and nothing interesting had happened when I rang you last night. Mitchell was hanging around. You know he tells my father everything I say and do. Life had got worse when her father had married Marla, Mitchell's mother, a few years ago. Not that she'd expected things to have improved. Not with how little Marla seemed to think of her. Your stepbrother has the friendliest grin I've ever seen. It's a perfect example of false advertising. Maddy laughed softly. Isn't it just? She sighed. The new boy, she waited for Sasha to nod, is called Logan. I met him while I was at Mum's this holiday. And? A million answers tumbled through her mind, but only one really mattered. Maddy glanced around again. The coast was still clear. She leaned near Sasha before she whispered, his kisses are amazing. Sasha's eyes widened and her mouth dropped open. Then she narrowed her gaze. You're stringing me along, aren't you? Maddy shook her head. I swear I'm not. It was the last day there. I don't even know exactly how it happened. We were all hanging out at the beach. Everyone was complaining about the holidays ending. Most of them live on the coast and were making plans to get together this weekend. One of the other guys lives in Cairns with his mum and was visiting his dad for the holidays. Can we get to the good bit? The bell will ring before you tell me. Well, 1 minute Logan and I were saying goodbye and wishing the holidays weren't ending, and the next thing we were kissing. And I don't mean a friendly kiss on the cheek. Out of 10? Maddy grinned. 11. You're shitting me. Nope. I hate you, you know. Maddy laughed. Sure. I wish I'd seen him first. Maddy's smile disappeared. He'll probably never want to see me again. I completely ignored him. Yesterday I was kissing him like. She waved her hand to fill in for the words she couldn't speak. Today I treat him like he doesn't exist. What am I going to do? Her voice rose as panic threatened to explode. You want me to talk to him? I can tell him your father's hero is Hitler, and he wants to be just like him. Maddy smiled sadly. If it wasn't for Mitchell, again she finished her sentence with a wave of her hand. Who was she kidding? Her father probably had 1,000,000 spies at her school. She knew he was friendly with the principal and who knew how many teachers. Don't worry about it. I'll tell him to pretend he doesn't know you. I'm sure he'll understand once I explain everything. Sasha rested her hand on Maddy's shoulder. Maddy groaned when the bell rang. She rose to her feet. He'll probably hate me forever. If he does, can I have him? Sasha linked her arm through Maddy's. No way. My revenge would be harsh if you two hooked up. I don't know. I think he'd be worth it. Maddy elbowed her friend lightly and Sasha giggled. Yeah, right, Sash. Nah, you're right. I wouldn't swap your friendship for 1,000 hot guys. Well, maybe 1,000 but not just one. Maddy grinned. 1,000, huh? What would you do with that many? I'd figure something out. Probably have them all waiting on me hand and foot and thinking I'm a goddess. They stepped out of the library and into the crowded hallway. I think you've been reading your mum's romance books again. She'll kill you if she finds out. They're not that bad. I don't know what her problem is. Anyone would think I was in primary school the way she goes on about them. Sasha stopped in mid-step and pulled Maddy to a halt. Don't look now. Maddy couldn't resist. Glancing in the direction Sasha had looked away from, she met Logan's gaze through the crowd. She wanted to run to him and beg him to forget the way she'd acted earlier. One step and then she halted, a voice bringing her to her senses. She turned to see her stepbrother walk towards her, laughing at something one of his mates had said. Maddy turned back towards Logan and mouthed the word sorry, before she looked at Sasha. At a quick nod from her friend, she headed towards Mitchell and away from Logan. Mitchell glanced at her as they passed each other. No greeting. No acknowledgement. Only that single glance. Maddy forced herself to keep walking and not turn to look over her shoulder. Hopefully Sasha would take Logan aside and explain the situation. She didn't dare check in case Mitchell glanced back too. He'd pounce on the slightest thing she did that was out of the ordinary. She really didn't want to start the term grounded. Visits to her mum were all that made life bearable.